Hello and welcome to Whispered Legends. I am your storyteller, and I'm thrilled to have you here. Get ready to journey into tales of mystery, adventure, and the unknown. If you love stories that spark your imagination, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a whisper. Now, let's begin today's tale. In the shadow of the Nilfgaardian Empire, deep within a fog-choked forest, whispers of an ancient curse had long haunted the villagers. They spoke in hushed tones of the Weeping Lady, a ghostly wraith that roamed the ruined halls of an abandoned castle, her mournful sobs echoing through the trees. The legend told of a beautiful woman whose love had betrayed her, leaving her to die in the clutches of a dark magic that turned her into something far worse than human. Geralt, ever the skeptic, had heard the stories but never gave them much thought. Yet, something about this particular curse gnawed at his instincts. Late one evening, he ventured into the cursed woods, his path lit only by the pale moonlight filtering through the thick fog. The trees seemed to close in around him, their gnarled branches creaking like old bones. The air was unnaturally still, and the farther he walked, the heavier the silence became, suffocating the very breath from his lungs. When the castle finally loomed before him, it was not the decaying stone or overgrown ivy that made his skin crawl, it was the oppressive cold. It was a cold that seeped into his bones, gnawing at him, threatening to steal his warmth. A low, haunting wail echoed from within the castle's crumbling walls, sending a shiver down his spine. Inside, the castle was worse than he imagined. The darkness clung to the air like a living thing, choking out all but the faintest glimmers of moonlight. The walls were lined with old tapestries, their once vibrant colors now faded, their edges frayed as though they had been clawed at by unseen hands. The sobbing, faint at first, grew louder, more desperate, as though the very walls themselves were weeping. Geralt's hand instinctively tightened around the hilt of his silver sword. He stepped deeper into the castle, following the sound of the crying. The sobs led him to a grand, abandoned hall, its stone floors cracked and stained. There, standing in the center, was the Weeping Lady. She was not a mere ghost. Her skin was pale, so pale it shimmered like moonlight on water. Her eyes were hollow, sunken pits, black as the void, and her mouth was twisted in a perpetual grimace of pain. But it was the sound of her voice that chilled Geralt to the core, an agonizing, broken wail that seemed to rip at his very soul. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely more than a breath. "Free me from this curse." The Witcher's heart pounded in his chest as he studied her. The stories had been true, she was no mere apparition. She was bound to the castle, cursed to remain in this twisted form, forced to relive the moment of her betrayal over and over for eternity. Geralt's mind raced as the Weeping Lady began to speak, her words unraveling a tragic tale. She had once been a noblewoman, loved by a powerful lord. Her beauty and kindness were unmatched, but her heart was claimed by a man who swore his love for her. Yet, in the end, it was all a lie. Her lover, hungry for power, had used her as a pawn in a dark ritual. He betrayed her to the sorcerers who twisted her into this monster, her soul trapped between the realms of life and death. "I was a fool," she moaned, her voice breaking. "I loved him, but he was a devil in disguise. Now I am nothing but a shadow of what I was. Forever weeping in this forsaken place." Geralt's breath caught in his throat. He could see the truth in her eyes, the tortured soul behind the monstrous form. But the Witcher knew better than to show pity. The curse had to be broken, and the only way to free her was to end her existence. As he raised his sword, the room grew colder still. The Weeping Lady's sobs became deafening, the sound reverberating through the very stones of the castle. Her eyes locked with his, and in that moment, Geralt felt the full weight of her agony, the centuries of torment that had twisted her into this nightmare. She reached out, her fingers long and thin like brittle branches, cold as ice. "Please," she whispered, her voice now a desperate plea. "End it. End my suffering." With a grim resolve, Geralt brought his sword down in a single, swift motion. The wailing stopped instantly, the silence deafening in its wake. The weeping lady crumpled to the ground, her form disintegrating into nothingness, leaving only a faint, lingering scent of roses. As the castle seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief, Geralt turned to leave, but something tugged at his mind. For a brief moment, he thought he heard the faintest whisper, "Thank you." But when he turned back, there was nothing but the empty hall, now forever silent. He left the castle, the weight of the curse lifted, but the echo of that final, sorrowful cry followed him as he vanished into the night. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, the shadow of the weeping lady lingered, her story never truly forgotten, always waiting for the next soul to wander too close to the darkness.